Hey everybody, Mike Wardinsky here, and today I'm going to show you how to take a boring abstract image and turn it into a fantastic piece of artwork. In this video, you'll watch me take a raw image like this and turn it into this. You're going to experience my entire creative workflow while it's happening. So grab a pen and paper and buckle up tight because we're going on a creative ride. Okay, so here we are in Lightroom and we have a completely raw photo in front of us. Now, working with abstract photos is a little different than a standard photograph because it's, well, abstract. So there's a lot of different things that you can do to this photo that you wouldn't necessarily do to a traditional photograph of, a landscape or an animal or a portrait or anything like that. Since this is abstract and we don't really know what it is anyway, we can get creative with our color choices and our editing choices. Sure, you could edit it like a normal photo, or you can get a little crazy and start to experiment with some of the calibration settings and different color settings. So let's just dive in here. I'm gonna start with calibration and just kind of move these red, green, and blue primary sliders and see what I get. I kind of like what's happening here when I bring the red down. It's giving a little more of a neutral look because by default, this has kind of got this yellowish green cast in here, which I don't love. It's a little intense. So I'm going to bring this down, and I can adjust the saturation if I want to. I think for now, I'll just kind of leave it close to where it was. I play with the green. I kind of like that, kind of making it just a little softer, a little more neutral, a little more pleasant and modern art looking, as opposed to a weird swamp. I might even pull the saturation down a little bit on that green, and then the reds, the blue, I think I'm going to leave where it is. I'm going to go to my color mixer now. I know I had some, if I look at the default, there's almost like a blue cast here, so I want to see if I can pull that out. I'm going to push this. Yeah, I can. So by pushing the blue saturation slider, I can push that. And let's see what happens with aqua. Not really getting much there. Let's check the yellows and the oranges. I do kind of like getting some of that orange up here with the that sort of blue, but I don't know if I want to bring it into this bottom part as much. So this might be an option where we create two different photos and then kind of blend them together in post-processing or in Photoshop. Of course, we're post-processing here. Also, sometimes it can be fun to play with color grading. Now, this is something that you guys probably don't use a ton, but in a situation like this, it can be really useful. We can probably pull out some of that. There's still some green in this sort of deep algae or whatever the heck that is. So in the color grading, I can come down to my shadows, which is this one right here, and pull that towards blue. And once I pull it a little ways, I can start to move this outside slider and really tint the shadows. And sometimes I'll do a full loop around and just kind of see what's happening. Yeah, maybe somewhere in this blue, and then I can adjust the depth of that. If I want to lighten it or make it a little darker, I can do that. In this case, I think I'll keep it roughly where it was. And I think I'll leave the highlights alone. I don't think I want to tint those. Sometimes I'll just try it though, just to see. If I did do anything, I'd probably tint it towards the blues, and then I'd really just want to brush it in those few little spots where there's already blue. Maybe I pull it just a hair. Yeah, I think I like that. And let's check out our midtones. And again, I think kind of going towards the cooling side, if anything. I'm going to hit a snapshot here. And I'll call this just snapshot 1. So it's easily identifiable, and I'm going to reset this I'll create another one. And I can bounce between these two. I kind of like both of them. I think number one is a little more evenly toned, or has even more even colors in it. Where this other one's a little warm, but I'm curious about something. So I'm gonna click on number two for right now. I might end up going back to one. But remember, as a photographer, you're an artist, and as an artist, you get to experiment. You get to be a mad scientist, and that's part of the fun of photography and art. And so in this case, we're going to get a little experimental. So I'm going to go ahead and add a radial gradient down here, kind of right where this main part is, down in the bottom. And I'm going to see what happens when I mess around with the hue here. Kind of create this sort of like blue cast. Even a kind of like a bluish purple. And I can go ahead and adjust that feather as I please. Kind of like the way that's looking. And again, I think I'm going to end up creating two different versions of this photo because I want this blue to kind of merge with this orange up here. And I could do that, but I could do that in Lightroom simply by subtracting from this mask. But I find it's a little bit easier to do that sort of blending in Photoshop. And so I'm gonna bring this into Photoshop for two reasons. One, you're gonna get to see how that would look, how you would blend two different versions of the same photo together. And two, it's just a little bit easier to make fine-tuned adjustments there. So I think at this point, I'll go ahead and hit another snapshot, call it 3. But I'm gonna go ahead and open this into Photoshop now. So actually, before I do that, I do wanna go back up, close out of my local adjustments. I might just do some basic adjustments here in the basic panel in tone curve here. Let's see what happens when I pull these highlights down. I think I like that. It's giving a little more texture here. I might even pull the shadows up a little. Whites up, blacks down. And I don't know if I want to touch clarity. If anything, maybe a little bit on the softer side. And dehaze, I'm probably not going to do much with either. I think I'm also going to leave this maybe like -9. And I'll go ahead and create a snapshot and call it 4. And you can see these are in alphabetical order, so my 4 kind of dropped on the bottom. So here's 3. And then here's 4. So it's just kind of filling it out, making it a little bit flatter. And I'll probably add some contrast back into this eventually. But I don't mind starting out with this sort of like softer look. I'm actually pretty pleased with the way it's looking already. But I think we can do just a little more fine tuning in Photoshop and get a really nice looking abstract photo here. So I will control click, edit in, and open as smart object in Photoshop. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop, and now I want to duplicate this right away because I'm going to create two different versions. So to do that, instead of just duplicating the image in the normal way by hitting Command J, it's really important to hold Control on a Mac or right click on a PC and then choose New Smart Object via Copy. Don't just choose Duplicate, otherwise what you do to layer 1 will happen to layer 2, and you don't want that. So if you made layer 1 black and white, layer 2 would turn black and white too. By doing it via a copy, New Smart Object via Copy, you can edit the two photos independently of one another. And sometimes I might even do 2, 3, or 4 different versions of the same photo and just sort of blend them all together. So now that I've got 2 layers, I'll just call this bottom one original. And this first one I'm not going to name yet because I'm not 100% sure exactly what I want to do. The main thing is I probably want to bring in that orange back. So I'm going to double click here. And there's a couple ways I could add that orange. I could just go to my color mixer, color mixer, and bring it in. That actually doesn't look too bad either. The blue's getting pretty intense though. I'd probably want to tone that down. But to start off, I'm just gonna hit OK. And then now I'm gonna create another smart object copy of the original. So control click, new smart object via copy. I'll drag this one up to the top. And this other one that I just edited, I'll call orange saturation. And then I'm going to double click on the smart object of the original copy now. And this time I'm going to go into my mask and I'm going to adjust this. In fact, I might just delete the whole thing. And then kind of go back. I'm going to close out just by clicking on the little slider icon at the top here. And this time I'm going to bring in the orange without any blue at all. And let's see what happens. I guess my blue's already cranked, so I can't really do much on that front. Might come down to calibration. See what happens. I really like the blues that is happening up at the top. Because I kind of want this theme of orange and blue here. And so I'm trying to see what sliders are going to give me that. And that's kind of the way I work. You kind of see me moving these sliders. Like, it's a weird concept. Your brain doesn't work in red, green, and blue primary channels, because that's what we're affecting here, the calibration of those channels. So my best suggestion to you is just to move these sliders and see what they do. The blue is usually the most intense. It makes things look pretty funky, but it can be good in certain scenarios. So I think this is pretty good for this layer for now anyway. We'll hit OK. Not a huge difference between the top part of this layer and the orange saturation that we did down below. And I'm actually going to, just to make sure you guys are all confused here, I'm going to create another copy of this orange saturation layer, and I'm going to tone down the blue here. So new smart object via copy, double click, and go back to that local adjustment, which is this icon right here. I'm going to click on it. And I think this time I'm going to take the saturation down of that local adjustment. So there's still some blue there, but it's not as intense. That way, if we want to calm down that blue, yet still have it in that area, that's going to be the way to do it, just by bringing that saturation down. And I think we're pretty good here. Go back to my color slider here, and I might see what happens if I pull the saturation down from the entire image. Okay, so now we kind of got this desaturated version as well. That way we can desaturate any parts of the image that we want when we're done here. So hit OK. So there it is. So also one thing to point out, I know I'm kind of going on a tangent here. I might create these different versions and I might not end up using all of them, and that's okay. I just want to have options when I'm ready to use them. So here we got our intense orange if we want it. Here's a desaturated one. And here's a pretty intense one. In fact, this desaturated one's not too different from our original. So I don't think, I actually really like the way this original is looking. So I don't think I need this desaturated one. I'm going to keep it for now. I'm going to call it desat. But I'm probably not even going to use that layer. Turn this one back on. And now I want to desaturate some of this blue. I don't want it to be quite so intense. So I'm going to click on this layer and I'm going to create a layer mask simply by clicking this icon in the lower right-hand corner. I'm going to click on my mask and I want to make sure I have the brush tool selected. B is the shortcut. I'm going to increase the brush size. Up at the top, I have my brush option. So here's brush size. I can bring that up pretty large, maybe something like this. I want to make sure I have a soft brush because I want it to feather. I don't want it to be obvious what I'm doing. So you almost always, when you're blending a photo, you want this set to soft. Opacity, we're going to bring down to maybe like 20%. I might increase it later on, but to start, we're going to start right around 20%. And then that's all we need to do with the brush settings, with the exception of switching it to black. Because we have a white mask, we don't want to paint white on a white mask because obviously nothing's going to happen if we do that. So I'm going to click this little double arrow here, and that switches from black to white. And now I can paint black onto this mask. Really important to make sure you have the mask selected and not the actual layer. The good thing about Photoshop is it won't let you paint onto a smart object. So it'll simply either create a new layer for you to brush onto or tell you that you can't do that. So if I click here, you can see it's saying, hey, this is a smart object. We can't brush on it. You have to rasterize it first. So if you see that, just hit cancel. The newer versions of Photoshop create a new layer, which I find kind of annoying. And I do have a YouTube video on how to turn that off. And I'll go ahead and leave a link to that video in the description down below. Okay, so here is our mask. I've got it selected. I've got black. I've got my brush, 21% opacity. Now I'm just going to come in here and just kind of brush where these really dark blue spots are. I might even increase the brush size and just kind of brush this area. And the thing about the way opacity works, if I click and hold and brush, it's never going to get darker than 21% opacity. I have to let go of the mouse in order for it to get darker. So once I click again, then I'm essentially at 42% opacity. And if I hold Option and click on my mask, you can see that's kind of what I've done so far. To get back to the regular view, just click on the layer or on the mask. And that's looking pretty good. Now I think I might want to brush in some of this more intense saturation in some of these other parts. But you can see when I turn this layer on, I lose all that nice blue. So what I want to do is create a mask on this layer, and then I want to invert it. So the keyboard shortcut for this is Command-I. That'd be Control-I on a PC. And you can see my mask just turned to black. Now we need to switch our brush color from black to white and turn the layer actually on. You can see you can't see anything when I turn the layer on. That's because it's completely masked out. And so now once we start to paint white onto this mask, you'll start to see parts of that layer appear. And I'm going to do 100% opacity at the top because it's a pretty subtle effect up here. It's really very minimal. And now once I get down to this section, I might need to be a little more careful. I might go down to 30% opacity and just kind of brush this in ever so slightly. Add a little more down here. Maybe I overdid it right there. You can always hit Command-Z or Edit Undo if you go too far. Or you can always switch from, right now I'm painting white. If I want to mask some of this back out, I can switch to black simply by hitting the X key or toggling with this little double arrow icon. And then I'll just go to 100% opacity. You can see I could just brush it right back out. That's the power of mask. Now, obviously, I didn't want to do that, so I'm going to undo that, Command-Z. And there we go. And I'm really liking the way this is looking. I can turn the mask off by holding Shift. I can hit my little snapshot button here. That's where we started. Still looks pretty nice that way. This is a little more striking. of an image. One area I might want to adjust a little more is this white spot up here. I don't know if I can pull some more detail out of that. So I'm going to try simply by duplicating this layer. So control click, new smart object via copy. And you're going to see things get, like, it kind of doubles the effect. Like this orange area got a little more intense, which I actually don't mind. So I think I might leave that. I kind of like that bright orange against the blue. It's a nice color scheme. But and I'll hit a snapshot in case this ends up being the one that I like. And I'm going to go back into the camera raw. And I'm going to come into light. My highlights are already down. I could bring exposure down. And that's bringing a little detail back in there. And I'll hit OK. And I'll hit a snapshot here. This is pretty nice as well. It might be getting a little bit darker than what I anticipated, especially in this area here and over here. But the great thing about this is I have this snapshot. I can always get back to here while I have Photoshop open. Also a good time to point this out. Once I close Photoshop, I'm going to lose all these snapshots. So if you think you might have a couple different versions here and you can't make a decision right away which one you like, simply click on the snapshot, go to File, Save As, give it a name, then Snapshot 2, File, Save As, give it a different name, and whichever ones you want to keep, you can save those as you go. Because once you close this out, you're going to lose all this history. But for now, I'm going to keep on plugging along here. I want to throw away this original mask that came along when I duplicated the layer. And I want to create a new mask and invert it. So Command or Control I. And then I'm just going to brush this in kind of in this top section. Let's go with 30% opacity. I might even brush in a little. Actually, I'm going to undo that. I might even come back under this original one and create another duplicate just because I liked when I did copy that original one, it got a little more orange. So in this case, I could just duplicate this layer by hitting Command or Control J. But that's a little bit dangerous because if you forget that you did that and you start changing one, the other one's going to change too. So I'll do the way I've been showing you. Control click, new smart object via copy. And there we go. We got a little bit more of that orange back in. And that's looking pretty good. And then we get that top spot a little bit darker. I might mask some of this back out. So I was painting white onto this black mask, so I switch this back to black. Low percent opacity, 10%, big brush, and I'm just going to do a big swipe over the top. And that's pretty good. Maybe even one more swipe, even two more swipes. And as I go back here, I'm actually starting to like this darker one, but it is a little darker, so I think I might want to add like a highlight kind of in the center to really kind of draw this in, and maybe add a vignette as well. So this is part of the process, you gotta kind of like work through the steps, and these snapshots are a huge part of my creative process because I like to see where I'm going, where I came from, and where I'm heading to, and this is the best way to do that. So I'm gonna grab the lasso tool now, and I'm gonna create a lasso kind of in the center of the image. And then we're going to add an adjustment layer to make this a little bit brighter. We'll use a curves adjustment layer. So I'm going to come down here to the adjustment layers. I'll go to curves. I'm going to create an S curve. So drag up on the right, Drag down on the bottom. Maybe pull this down just a pinch more. I turn that on and off, and you can see there's a really hard line around the edge, and that's not what we want. We want to create a nice soft line, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the mask and go to feather and just feather this out by quite a bit, like 700 to 1,000, somewhere around there. And that's giving us a nice pop there. Let's see what a vignette would look like here. I'm going to Command minus, Control minus on a PC to really shrink this down. That way I don't have to draw these huge circles with the mouse. And I'm just going to draw a circle kind of around the entire image very loosely with this lasso tool. Create another adjustment layer, again, adding in curves. This time I'm going to drag downward. Now the opposite of what I wanted to happen is happening. The inside is darkening, and I really want to darken the outside. So it's really easy to fix that. Simply click on the mask, Command I, and there we go. The outside is now dark. And again, we need to feather this. So click on the mask and just drag feather up to about 700 or 1,000, somewhere in there. I might even go to 1,000 this time. Ooh, yeah, I like that. I might even darken a little bit more there. I might even continue to bring this orange up just a pinch. This time I think I'm just going to do it with a simple adjustment layer. So I'm going to go to Hue Saturation. And I'm going to just go to yellows maybe. And then bring up the saturation of the yellows. Yep, that did it. And then I can turn that layer on and off, see what's happening. And then I can invert this layer and just brush it in where I want. So again, Command I. And then with the brush, set to white, so switch this back to white. Here's my brush, way too big, bring it down. Again, left bracket key, and I'm at 10% opacity. I might go to 20 and just brush in a little bit right at that top there. And that's pretty good. So we've come a real long ways. I'll hit another snapshot, and I'm going to save this. From where we started in this image. This looks nothing like the original image. But again, that's part of the greatness of abstract photography is you get to be in charge of where you take the image. I mean, we could have gone a completely different direction here. We could have made this pink, yellow, green, whatever color you wanted. And so once this is done saving, we'll bounce back into the Lightroom and I'll show you the original compared to where we are now. So back to Lightroom. Here is our original sort of like base edit. And if I reset this, that's where we started. That's where we are. This looks like a piece of artwork. It could be a painting, mixed media. It could be an aerial image of something, you know, from a couple thousand feet high. That's what's so cool about it. This is the original. It's still pretty cool, but it's not. It's very earthy. It's very like kind of like slimy, you know, bacteria, gonna kind of, you know, just it's a little creepy. Where this is a little more pleasant to look at. Well, that's it. You made it to the end of the video. Congratulations. I know I covered a lot of techniques in this video, but you know, feel free to watch it multiple times and get creative with your editing style. There's a lot you can do with abstract photography and editing. The possibilities are endless. If you did enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications down below. And of course, head over to naturemike.com for some great in-field workshops, post-processing lessons, and articles. I'll see you in the next video.